most corrupt presidency. I think, who was the talking about this? In the 1920s, I think it's Herbert Hoover, but I could be wrong. But in the 1920s, there's another very corrupt president. But Grant did have a lot of corruption in his government. So, during Grant's presidency, during Radical Reconstruction, black codes were passed. These were laws by the new Southern government that attempted to regulate the lives of their former slaves. Does that sound like equality or freedom? No. So again, the South is still, they're trying to go back to the way life used to be. However, as the famous book says, that way of life is non-livable. But they're trying, they're making an attempt, and they're going to pass what we call black code. Now, there were some rights. They did allow marriage, the ownership of property. There was limited access to court. They could not testify against whites or be on juries or state militia, so they're limited in those ways. Some jobs are going to be limited for them, and there's going to be what we call sundown towns, where basically there was a curfew, and you had to be in your house before twilight. So they're going to severely restrict the movement and the opportunity for the former slaves, for the former slaves. Some of these will become what we call Jim Crow laws. Now, Jim Crow is based on Thomas Dartmouth Daddy Wright, who was a white actor who was the first to use blackface. And he called the character Jim Crow. So Jim Crow gets the name from this actor who put on blackface, and he named that character Jim Crow. And it came to mean the racial caste system, the social and racial caste system in the South. The Jim Crow laws will be present until the 1960s. So, there's a question so far. We know that blackface is incredibly offensive. What's that? Who did it for Halloween? She used to be a dancer. Oh, Leanne. Yeah. She put on blackface to try to be like one of the girls in Orange is the New Black. You guys seen Orange is the New Black? It's fabulous. Really, everybody's watching it. It's on Netflix. That and House of Cards. House of Cards is really good. But anyways, blackface is not politically correct. It's not appropriate. But Thomas Dartmouth is going to be the first one to do it, and that character, whose character Jim Crow, will come to be that social caste system that lasts into the 1960s. Here's a picture of him in his blackface. So what do you see in this picture? You think it's an accurate portrayal, or do you think he's mocking? Sure. This character was mocking this character. So there's the actor that we get that name from. Now there's another part we haven't talked about, and that's women's rights. Remember, they organized before the Civil War. They were trying to get the right to vote. This movement will be re-energized after the war. They're going to focus on job opportunities and unequal pay. They wanted better divorce laws, protection from domestic violence. Do you guys know where rule of thumb comes from? Rule of thumb is the rule that you could beat your wife with a stick as long as it was not bigger than the width of your tongue. So, thinking about the next time you say that, and women are going to try to fight that. They're going to try to fight domestic violence and other such terrible laws like the rule of thumb. They're also going to try to fight divorce laws. Divorce is time any children go to the man. And I don't know when that changes. I assume sometime in the 20th century. But in the 19th century, if there was a divorce, children went to the husband or the father. Women's rights will split as to whether or not they're going to support the Reconstruction Act or not. Some Reconstruction Acts, remember, gave blacks the right to vote, and some women didn't agree with that, some people did. Some people wanted more out of those acts. They said, hey, women should be able to vote too. Others were more concerned there being more people able to vote. So Reconstruction will split the movement. Reconstruction did not radically change gender boundaries. So there's gender boundaries are going to continue the way they were for a while after our class ends. Gender boundaries, I think, will really start to change in the 1960s. I think that's when they'll really start to change. Now, questions? The downfall of Reconstruction happened in part because there was lots of corruption. There was lots and lots of corruption. There was also the fact that most white Southerners were not ready to accept former slaves being able to vote. They couldn't wrap their head around it. Many blacks would be assaulted and murdered for benign actions. So somebody could be assaulted or murdered for getting in somebody's way on sidewalks. So you know how sometimes sidewalks are crowded. This offended people, and they could be hurt or even killed for something that benign. Now, there's one thing I haven't mentioned yet. You guys have an idea if it has to do with assaulting and murdering blacks? The Ku Klux Klan was formed, and it was the military arm of the Democratic Party in the South. So a lot of people were Democrats, and they were a military arm. They would intimidate people to vote one way or another. They officially started in Tennessee and then spread. And this is officially a terrorist organization. They allowed whites to pressure blacks into submission and prompt black immigration. They were incredibly brutal to people. They were mostly brutal to blacks and former slaves, but also some white people that either went against them in some way or supported the blacks in a way that they didn't like. So they're really a terrorist organization. They tried to invoke terror into those organized actions. There were some enforcement acts to curtail their activity and outlaw their activity in 1870 and 1871. These laws did work to the extent that they ended in 1872. However, they were revived in 1915. So there's a small hiatus. I doubt that clubs, you want to call them clubs or groups, I doubt the group actually stopped, but they weren't as violent or noticeable as they had been. Does that make sense? Like, technically they ended in 1872. I doubt that every group ended. They will revive in 1915. Part of that was a severe economic depression and World War I was also a factor in the revival. So, the downfall of Reconstruction also happened because of the severe economic depression in the late 1870s, and conservative white Democrats, who were called Redeemers, regained control of Congress. So there are a lot of factors against Reconstruction. There was a lot of good ideas, but the country simply wasn't ready for it.